Interesting. I want to jump off that in a second. But first, remind everyone to download, rate, and subscribe to the 415ers podcast 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday on the Odyssey Sports Podcast Network with 95.7 The Game. Feel free to follow us on social media, 415ers on all social media platforms. eGinnings10, Marc Grandy, Marc with a C, Grandy with an I. Well, so that kind of takes me to my next place, Marc, of like with the 49ers and having to, I guess, prove themselves. It feels like the last place they can do that would be in the postseason since they've already punched their ticket. I do think that there's two more opponents left in their schedule. I'd say that should be difficult or tests, so to speak. I think that this weekend with Washington, who in my opinion would have a name in the hat for the best front four in football. And then the Raiders, who are never going to be an easy out, as we've seen this entire season, especially this weekend. But it sounds like with the way things are shaping up in the NFC, and I've begun to feel this sentiment from a lot of fans that I've seen on social media as well. It does feel like there is going to be disappointment if this team does not at least get to the conference title game, which is wild to think of with a rookie quarterback that took over just 3 weeks ago. But I'm sort of in that place as well, just because of how good this team has looked, along with how I'll say not fragile, but beatable a lot of the other top teams in the NFC, even Philadelphia included, has looked in recent weeks. This 49ers team does feel like, to me, back in a place where I was with before Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt, of NFC title game or bust. It sounds like you're there too.
100%. If the Niners do not get to the NFC Championship game, they will be very frustrated with themselves. You get to that point, it's a coin flip. Who knows what happens? Maybe you win on the road in Philadelphia in January in frigid conditions. Maybe you get lucky and Dallas upsets Philadelphia in the second round of the NFC playoffs and you host an NFC championship game. Who knows what happens at that point? But if the Niners do not handle business and beat two of, some combination of Giants, Washington, Seattle, Detroit, and then Minnesota potentially, they're going to be really upset at themselves. I think I would rather play Minnesota than Dallas in a second round playoff game. What becomes tricky is then, where is that game? I think if you could guarantee me Dallas at home in Santa Clara instead of Minnesota on the road in Minneapolis, I'd probably choose Dallas, but just the opponents by themselves, I'd rather play Minnesota. So with that said, if the Niners are unable to handle business, win two playoff games, one of which on the road, the other, or one of which at home, the other of which probably against a Minnesota team who you would be favored against, I think it's a failure for the 49ers. And whether that's fair or not doesn't really matter. You have a rookie quarterback. I know it's difficult to win a playoff game, let alone two, but you have the best defense in football. You have the best weapons in football, and you should be able to win two playoff games considering how you're playing right now. So, yeah, I'm with you. If the Niners are unable to get to the NFC title game, and I think anything beyond that, it's a flip of a coin. Things can go poorly and go your way just based on random luck at points like that. But if you're unable to get to that game, I think Niner fans and the Niners themselves will view this as a disappointing postseason.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about compared to we were just a few weeks ago, because I do think that, look, the 49ers have reason to believe, as we've laid out, that between them and Philadelphia, or after them, like there's just a chasm between those top two teams and the rest in the NFC. Where I'm at with the 49ers and sort of those expectations for this team right now is, I do think that I would be disappointed in the team. And I know that the quarterback position is always one that comes first, but I don't know if I can necessarily be disappointed with Brock Purdy, because look, I mean, if he goes on the road and throws 4 picks and they get absolutely hogwashed by, I don't know, Minnesota, or they take a loss at home because Brock Purdy plays poorly, then we might be having a different conversation. But at the same time, because of what the expectations are for him, or I guess him as, a like an entity as a seventh round pick, as Mr. Irrelevant. To me, look, I've been waiting for the rookie moment to come, and it hasn't so far. I think maybe in certain spots you've seen glimpses of a quarterback that's made mistakes, but I think that happens with every single quarterback. And I mean, look, Jalen Hurts threw 2 interceptions this weekend. And I just think that Brock Purdy is in a position where, to me, even though the team itself isn't playing with house money, and I do think should be expected to get to the conference title game, I also don't think that I can expect Brock Purdy to go out and win a playoff game. I think he can do everything he's done so far, which is put the Niners in a position to win in the playoffs. But Mark, and maybe this will shift depending on, look, if the Niners have to come from behind sometime in the next 3 weeks, and Brock Purdy shows you a bit of that clutch gene, which he hasn't had to do so far, because I don't think that's what the Niners need him to do, nor want him to do at this point. It's simply make sure that the boat gets from dock to dock, because you're rolling around with 2 rows of cannon fire that no other ship in the sea can offer at this point. Like, so if that makes sense with the team, I have expectations of them to reach the title game, but Brock Purdy himself, I guess I don't necessarily expect much from him.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I think I agree. I think kind of to further that point, if you're looking at what the Niners can maybe prove or show that maybe gives you more confidence heading into the postseason, like what can they do over these next 3 weeks, right? You have the Washington Commanders, the Las Vegas Raiders, and then the Arizona Cardinals. What can they do in those 3 games to maybe up your confidence level heading into the postseason that they could get to the NFC title game? To your point, I think it's simply just prove to us, or at least give us more evidence that what Brock Purdy is doing is sustainable. Like what you said, we're all kind of waiting and almost expecting to see him look like a rookie quarterback. He hasn't just yet. Again, there has been a couple of moments. The dropped interception by Quandre Diggs for the Seahawks stands out in my mind, but really it's pretty slim pickings for terrible mistakes, bad decisions that Brock Purdy has made. So one thing that I'm looking at over the next 3 weeks as the Niners get ready for the postseason and try to claim that 2 seed in the NFC is this really who Brock Purdy is, or have we just seen the best 3 game stretch you could possibly hope for from him? If these next 3 games come and go and Brock Purdy looks relatively, similar, he's not turning the ball over all, throwing for around 200 yards, at least a touchdown a game, and he's converting a big third down with his legs, and he's generally playing with the same poise and moxie as he did in Seattle. If all those things keep happening over the next 3 weeks, I think your confidence level jumps. And maybe that's when the point you're talking about, the Niners aren't playing with house money. They are expected to perform in the postseason, but the quarterback, it's a different story. Those two things are kind of separate. But I think there's a chance if Brock Purdy continues to play how he has over these next 3 weeks, maybe that gap kind of, gets closer. It decreases just a little bit, because at that point you'd be just a little bit more confident in who Brock Purdy actually is.
Yeah, and I think I'd be confident in the 49ers because really the only thing that you could make an argument that they have a lesser, value added at a certain position compared to other top teams would be quarterback. I think that, and we've sort of touched on this throughout this episode and recent ones, but even though maybe Kirk Cousins or Dak Prescott have postseason experience, a lot of people would hold that, I think, against them because of their prior playoff experience. So Brock Purdy is still largely an unknown, but he looks to be a guy that is going to, maintain whatever composure or poise that Kyle Shanahan, praised him for on Thursday into a big playoff atmosphere. And I do think that also is why, look, if you're telling me that the 49ers have to go on the road before the conference championship, I do think that game would be a lot more even in my eyes just because of the type of atmosphere and every single round in which ramps up. Look, Brock Purdy showed himself, I think, to be able to handle the moment against Seattle in what would be the closest thing to a playoff atmosphere the Niners will face for the rest of this regular season. So we won't get to see, unfortunately, until January. But to me, if they do need to prove anything, they just need to prove that they can stay healthy. Like that's the only thing that the Niners need to prove to me at this point. Maybe how to handle a strong front four like Washington, maybe being able to, kind of take care of or dominate a dual threat quarterback like Taylor Heineke, maybe being able to hold a Derek Carr and Devontae Adams led aerial attack in check. Maybe, but I think both of those things are stretches for me. The most important thing the Niners can do at this point, outside of maybe Brock Purdy proving himself even more so over the last couple of weeks, would be to get into the postseason with your entire roster as much as possible at 100%. And so even then, if the 49ers in these next couple of weeks before the postseason opt to kind of manage some stuff and, guys aren't playing full snap counts and they maybe have a clunker or, don't play up to par, it's also going to be tough for me to look at these games as anything more than table setters, essentially, for January in the postseason.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, Niners have proven absolutely everything. Their defense is elite, best defense in the NFL. Their offense can put up points when they've needed to. The only thing that they have yet to prove, and this isn't just a this year Niners thing, it's a Kyle Shanahan era Niners thing, is their health. If they can prove that they can stay healthy, which you do that by just staying healthy over the final 3 weeks of the regular season, that'll go a long way into the postseason. You did bring up something that I think is interesting. We can briefly touch on here and maybe dig into it more next episode on Wednesday. But you talked about maybe the Niners potentially easing back on some workloads the final 3 weeks. They have the division wrapped up. At the very worst, they'll be the 3 seed. The 1 seed, believe it or not, is still technically there. If the Niners, if everything breaks the way of the Niners, they need to win out. The Eagles need to lose out. The Niners would then have the tiebreaker. But the 2 seed and the 3 seed are the two very realistic options for the 49ers. Is it worth it? Let's say the Niners need to win out. Let's say Minnesota only loses one more game the rest of the way. Is it worth it, Evan, for the 49ers to kind of go balls to the wall, try to win all 3 of these games to claim the 2 seed? Or is a road game at Minnesota not too daunting for them, that they are okay being the 3 seed and maybe potentially being a little healthier heading into the postseason? What do you think is more valuable to the 49ers?
I think health is more valuable. I do think that, look, two road games on the way to a Super Bowl
Yeah.
is tough for any team. And I do want to get into this more so on our Friday or on our Wednesday episode coming up this week. And then, of course, Friday before Washington this upcoming weekend. But just first thoughts are the 49ers are as good as any team in the NFL when healthy. And that's the most important thing in my mind right now. So, off of that, even if the 2 seed is within reach, and I think it will be, to me, that's more so going to be because of Minnesota losing hold of it, which I think easily could happen, or maybe the Eagles dropping a couple, and other teams also not looking at these last few weeks as being incredibly important because Minnesota's got their division wrapped up. Philly, in all likelihood, will have the division mathematically wrapped up very soon. Like, I don't think you're going to see another 20 plus rush attempt game for Christian McCaffrey the rest of this regular season.
Yeah.
That's how I think Kyle Shanahan's going to approach it. Like, if we win, that's great. We'll do what we have to, but I'm not putting Chris McCaffrey or Brandon Ayuk or Brock Purdy or our defense in a compromising situation before the postseason.
I agree with you. I do think, however, the Niners do not need the Niners do not need to go kind of balls to the wall to win these 3 games. I think they can easily win these games, and maybe that's disrespectful to the Raiders, who could be fighting for their lives. Same thing for the Commanders, but I don't think the Niners need to, kind of pull out all the stops like they did in Seattle with Christian McCaffrey's 32 touches. They can win all of these games without their best game. And then on the flip side, the Vikings have the Giants at home, at Green Bay, and at Chicago. Maybe not the most daunting 3-game stretch, but none of those are gimmies either. So could be difficult for the Vikings to close things out. Niners, I think, have a more favorable final 3 games. But to your point, I do agree. Health isn't worth, getting 2 home games instead of just 1. But we'll see how it all plays out, and we'll break that down more on Wednesday.
Yeah, no doubt. We'll get into that on our Wednesday episode as this concludes our Monday post non-Niners Sunday. But of course, they won on Thursday. They got the division wrapped up, and we are looking forward to seeing what happens the rest of this regular season as the Niners prepare for their 3rd postseason trip in the last 4 years. A lot of exciting times in the Bay and a lot of exciting times on the 415ers, as always, Mark. So I appreciate you. Appreciate you being with us, as always, here on this Monday.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to Wednesday already.
All right, man. That'll do it for this episode of the 415ers. Feel free to download, rate, and subscribe wherever you download your podcasts. Evan Giddings, Mark Grandy, and we'll talk to you next time.